So I did that for 2 years, like just supply teaching. And, obviously I'm still training to make the national team. And so it was a lot, but right out of school, I started coaching Bantam hockey with North York Storm, and I just loved it. And then, the opportunities continue to grow for the women's game and the need for coaches. And so I loved it. And just like growing up, my mom was always like, find a job that you're going to wake up every day and love to go to. And I was like, this is it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And really it is teaching. So
yeah, exactly. Right. Like there is, a majority of the component is like, you're teaching, you're nurturing, you're kind of doing all the same things that a teacher does. So, but just with the game that I love. So even better.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just like the rest of us, it's just a bug, a passion. And like you said, it's the best thing if you can find a job that you sort of love to get to every day. So,
yeah.
Tremendous. So,
Wally, you got your cat.
Sorry?
I do. It's my company.
Yeah.
I'll hold her up. I gave her a lines cut.
Ah.
I didn't, but the pet store did. But
How old is she, Wally?
15.
Oh, okay. So ours at home, Marcy is she's like going on 18 now. She's
wow.
got a few health issues, but still hanging in there. Kind of nice. Morning, Tom. And morning.
Morning. How are you?
Good. And who's the guest user? I'm not sure.
That's me. That's me. I forgot to put my name down. Sorry.
Yeah. And who's there? Sorry.
It's just me. Sorry. I don't have my laptop open. I was jumping off a work call. I appreciate this call. Let's see.
This is Thomas?
Yeah. Oops.
Good. There's a few people that are going to be on that haven't been on before that have been contacting me. Thomas gave me the email addresses and phone numbers for your coaching partner, Courtney, and I don't know if she's going to get on this morning, but Tim Taylor is an American friend working in minor hockey, and Tom Malloy is presently coaching U13 girls after having coached college teams and university teams in national championships on the female side and the male side. So Tom's been around the horn and still at it. And believe it or not, he skates twice a week regularly. They play here in Calgary. So I don't know if Sammy Joe's going to make it on. The U18 starts today, Courtney, in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the teams attending
for the under
the U18 Worlds? Yeah,
the men's teams. I'm actually not sure.
Okay, but are the women's on now? Women's U18?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I'm really curious, Tim. I remember scouting Courtney years ago, but I'd like Tim for you to explain your background when you first met her, saw her, and having worked with her over the years, to give her a bit of an introduction to the group that are here. And some people may chime in, and we'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves at some point later. But Tim, if you could just tell your Courtney Tim story over the years, and then we'll see where it goes. Okay?
Yeah. I actually have I've had the pleasure of coaching Court a number of times with Hockey Canada, but I remember very clearly the first time I saw you play, Court. It was in Toronto. I think it might have been at one of the U18, the provincial U18 tryouts. Can't remember the name of the rink, but just for everybody else, like Courtney was a terrific player. A forward for the most part, I think, through your younger years, right, Court? And then, like myself, I was the same. Converted to defense at some point, and Courtney was an elite really elite level forward, very, very skilled, and made the transition to defense. And we'll get you to talk about that maybe a little bit, Court, that experience, how it happened, and what you liked or didn't like about it, and how it came about. But so I was at University of Vermont my first year, and got to see Courtney play. Was really impressed with her skill level. She went to the wrong school, but we won't hold that against her. So I had the distinct pain of watching Courtney from across the bench, destroying my team on a number of occasions at University of Vermont. But she's since moved into the coaching ranks, and she won a gold medal for Canada at the World Championship as a player, and she's won a couple as coach for the U18 team, one as an assistant, one as a head coach. She's now assistant coach, assistant or associate head, I'm not sure, Court.
Assistant.
Okay. Her head coach I had the pleasure of working with at Hockey Canada camps as well, Kara Gardner-Maury, or Maury-Gardner, whatever. And they together won the first ever ECAC championship for Princeton a few years ago. They've done a terrific job bringing that program to the top level in the NCAA. And the main reason, I was really interested, I saw a few of the games at their U18 World Championship in January, and immediately thought that it would be great to get Courtney to come on and just talk about her experience as a coach, and in particular at that event where she had the distinction of being part of the first all-female staff at Hockey Canada, which is a terrific little historic honor. And it's really a pleasure to coach. I really enjoyed it. I think at 2015 Worlds, which didn't go our way, Court, but the way we wanted. Anyway, I'll just turn it over to you, Court, and add anything else you want, and then just maybe start with your experience at U18 Worlds this year, how it went for you, maybe some lessons or takeaways. And I also had the pleasure of coaching or working with at different points, both Tara and Steph, your assistant coaches at Worlds there, and both of them at Hockey Canada camps as well. So welcome, and really thanks for agreeing to come on, Court.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I know, like, when I click the link and you can see the participants that are kind of in this group, it's a pretty incredible group to be able to chat with, and hopefully jump on and hear other people speak as well. But yeah, the under 18 experience, it was incredible. Steph McHugh, one of the assistants, and Tara Watchorn. What was really cool was that we've all played together on Team Canada before. So we kind of shared that connection right off the hop, which was really great to be able to share that with the girls, obviously coming into camps and just knowing how stressful it is and what they're feeling and what they're thinking and all the kind of dark thoughts that come with, the pressure of playing for Team Canada. So I think that was pretty special to be able to stand alongside those two young women. And obviously, as you mentioned, the first all-female staff. So it was a really great experience. I learned so much. I had so much fun, and I can't wait to do it again.
Awesome.
You want me to how do you want me to
Sure.
start this?
Yeah, well, in any way you like. One of the things in particular I'm wondering about is, things really went your way, and if any of the other guys, people aren't aware, like the gold medal game was, Sweden had a great run through the tournament, and as they did at Worlds this year at the world level, really great for their program to kind of be reviving itself. Like what are some of the things going through your head as a head coach when the game really starts to run away from Sweden? Like, for people that don't know, Canada scored 5 goals in about a 6.5 minute span in the first period, sort of against the odds. The Swedish goalie stood on her head the day before, and I think that was probably a factor. She was absolutely tremendous when they beat the U.S. in the semifinal game, and then it kind of pulled herself in that game. What are some of the things going through your head as a head coach when the game gets to that point. It's 5-0 late in the first period.
Yeah. I think, my initial thought is, holy cow, what is happening here? Like, is this real life? Like, are we up 5-0? And obviously you're not saying any of this. You're just kind of thinking it. Like, you can't believe that, your team has come out of the gate and just absolutely put it to the Swedes, which was incredible to see. And then it's just like, all right, there's tons of hockey left. So we can't get too cocky here. We can't get complacent. We can't sit back. We have to keep our foot on the gas. How do you keep the girls motivated? How do you keep them, realizing that there's still, 50 minutes of hockey left, which is a long, long time. You just, it can turn around real quick. We were running into penalty trouble all tournament. So if we start doing that, the Swedes had a great power play. So we could not take our foot off the gas. I think that was the biggest thing.
Yeah, and anything in particular that you, Steph, and Tara sort of talked about, or the way you approached it, like sort of in that first intermission must have been kind of like you're saying, kind of like a wow experience. Like, what do we want to focus on here going out for the second period?
Yeah, definitely. I think, throughout the tournament, we talked about these 6 habits, and just sticking to that was our game plan. That's what was going to make us successful. And so the 6 were shots with screens, triangle plays, stick lifts, pressure to contact, boxing out, and second quick. And that was our emphasis from August all the way through the World Championships. That was the game we were going to play, and that's how we were going to reward ourselves if we stuck to these 6 habits. That was going to allow us to be successful. So I think just bringing us back to day one, hey, what are our habits? How are we going to leave the ice in a better place with these habits and continue down this, I guess, fantastic run that we were on.
So just maybe walk through those habits, talk a little bit about them, and like why you maybe chose to focus on them, and maybe 1 or 2 other things that like as a coach, you want to keep it simple, which 6 habits is sort of a short, simple list people can keep in, the players can keep in their heads, but maybe talk a little bit about those habits and why the 3 of you as a staff thought they were really important for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 offensive and 3 defensive. So I think from an offensive standpoint, shots with screens, the goalies, the Finnish goalie, the Swede goalie, they gave us a run for our money. Like, we had, 40, 50 shots on net. And so we have to get in front of those goalies' eyes. Mm-hmm. So that was a big thing, like getting in front of their eyes, making sure they can't see that puck. Triangle plays, just how can you create 2-on-1s all over the ice? These players are so skilled individually, and a lot of them like to turn everything into a 1-on-1. So how are we creating 2v1s against the other team all over the ice? The next one was stick lifts, and this was a big one from Troy Ryan that he implemented with the Olympic team. Such a simple habit, and you think that everyone's just doing it, but when you emphasize, you're back checking hard, you're lifting sticks, you're turning pucks over, and now we're going on offense. Just, to see it at the Olympic level and to see that Troy Ryan really harped on that, I think like that was we need to harp on that as well. Such a simple thing, but when you emphasize it, it becomes something that, everyone's cheering for on the bench when there's a stick lift, and you're just getting that energy out of everyone on the bench. Pressure to contact, this was a big one. So F1, pressure contact, or you're in the D zone. We wanted other teams to be scared to go retrieve pucks, to go in the corners with us. We wanted to play physical, take the body, pick up the loose puck. So that was a big one, and kind of, maybe at the end of the day could have hurt us, because we did run into a lot of penalties. But I think we wanted the other team to be scared of us. We wanted them to be scared every time they went back to get pucks. And then our next one was boxing out. So similar to shots of screens, now we're in the defensive side of the game, getting people out of the way of our goalie. How are we boxing out? Are we, fronting, blocking shots, picking up sticks, making sure we're clearing that area so our goalies can be successful. And then second quick, that goes right into the pressure to contact. If we're pressuring to contact, our second layer needs to be there to pick up that puck. We got to be anticipating that play, ready to break that puck out. And so I think, those 6 things, like you said, very simple. But I think at this age, if you give them simple tangibles that they can focus on, it's going to help complete their game at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so one of the things that's sort of come up in the last 10, 12, 15 years in hockey is, like, as a player, I was in a defenseman eventually. I was really focused on boxing out and tying up sticks in front of the net. And I don't know when it was, 10, 12 years ago, people started talking, even at Hockey Canada. I remember having a discussion with Mel. It might have been as far back as Torino, I don't know. But the whole fronting thing. And for me, I didn't really understand that concept that well, like why you would want to leave somebody behind you, where if the puck did get through and there was a rebound, they could probably get to the puck first. And the second part of it for me was, because when I was with the Danish women's team, one of the things we really focused on with our D was tying up sticks for the goalie in front of the net, under it to control the stick, over it, whatever it is, to deny tips and rebounds. And if you're fronting someone, you really can't do that. So you're leaving that offensive player stick free to tip and redirect and get to rebound. So talk a little bit about that, that sort of controversy, boxing out versus fronting, from your perspective, maybe as a coach, and then as a defenseman yourself in your later years playing.
Yeah, I think fronting kind of came into the game, I think, just like kind of toward the end of my career. And I remember being a D being like, why do I gotta block the shot when we have a goalie? Like, I should be boxing out, lifting up six, just like you're saying. So I'm still a little bit indifferent on which one I like better. I think that if you're gonna front the puck, you got to be able to block that shot. Like, it's a skill. You have to be good at it. Otherwise, like you're saying, it's going to get through, and now you're out of position. Now you're not picking up a stick and the player's behind you wide open for that rebound. So I think from a fronting standpoint, like, you have to be willing to block the shot. You have to be willing to sacrifice. And I think, if you don't have a group that's gonna, be all in on that, then I think you got to stick to the boxing out. I do really like the lifting up the stick. I think that within the women's game, the goalies are good enough. They're big enough. They're getting out to the top of the crease to save that initial shot. And I think a lot of goals in women's hockey come from that rebound. So I do like the boxing out, lifting up the stick a little bit more. But, I see it even in the NHL. Like, these D are fronting the puck. They're blocking shots all over. So I think if either or can be successful, but you have to be committed to blocking that shot if you're going to be fronting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, as I said, there might be a situation for me where, if somebody gets to the net front first and you're getting there late, or it's a big huge player that you get tangled up, you're gonna lose the battle to, like Courtney. She was a big, strong player, and you had a little D trying to tie her up. Maybe you're not going to be successful. But I really feel like, much like your offensive key to create screens and take the goalie's eyes away, if you have, in most teams, especially in, well, all teams, not just female game, almost all teams focus on that offensively. Like, get to net front, make it tough for the goalie, take the goalie's eyes away. If you flip that on its side, so if you're defending, you don't want to let teams do that. So that's where the boxing out comes in. Try to get body position early when you're coming back to the net or whatever it is. But I think it's a really, really critical and important skill for defense people to develop, where they get themselves in position to lift a stick or tie up a stick over top to help the goalie see the puck, number one, and then deny the tip and the rebound, which are always dangerous, as we know. So talk a little bit about sort of the tournament itself, and were there any points where you felt sort of some stress challenges? There were obviously some pretty close games, and just talk a little bit about the tournament itself, how it evolved, and were there any sort of crisis points for you and
Yeah.
the staff and the team?
Yeah. So I think it was, I mean, a good thing, and obviously you never want to lose, but heading into the tournament, our exhibition game, we actually had lost to the Finns. So I think that was a great wake-up call for our players. You know, we had played them in the summer and kind of just walked all over them. And so their mentality heading into that game obviously wasn't in the right place, and we lost, which was, you know, good heading into the tournament. Like I said, I think it was a little bit of a wake-up call. And then we ended up facing them again right away, first game. And again, I think, you know, one of the biggest struggles we had was just we took so many penalties. And I actually was talking with Perry Pern, and he was just like, you can't take that many penalties. It's going to cost you. And I was like, oh, I know, Perry. Like, but he was just like, you know, if you have possession of the puck, then you're not taking these penalties. So obviously you're not possessing the puck enough. And I was like, that's a great point and very valid, you know, an easy way to, instead of, you know, yelling at the players that we can't take penalties. Well, how can we be different? And that's, you know, possess the puck. If we're possessing the puck, then we're not taking these extra penalties. So I think that was a big area of focus throughout the tournament. But, you know, the Finns gave us a pretty good game. And then we faced the Americans, which we obviously know is going to be a hard fought battle. We came out to play another physical game. We weren't in the box as much. So I think that really worked to our benefit. And then obviously we faced the Swedes. Or did we faced the Swedes second, actually. The Americans were third. But so against the Swedes, we ended up taking 14 penalties, which is unheard of. And if we had one more penalty, I would have been kicked out of the game for
Really?
that game and the next game. And I didn't even know that was a rule, right? So
Nor did I.
yeah. So we're, you know, all game just, and again, like one of these habits is like pressure to contact. Like we wanted to be physical. We wanted to play that physical game, but we had to find that boundary line because obviously we were pushing over that boundary line. I mean, it did help us come up with a great PK. Tara Watchorn ran our PK, and so we had tons of video to go off of and make sure we sharpen that up heading into our US game. And then, like I said, the American game was great. It was physical. It was fast. You know, we ended up coming out on top, which was fantastic. And then we faced the Finns again. And, you know, we're heading into a hot goalie who's done great the whole tournament. And then again, we fall into, you know, penalty situations, and it's a tie game. And, you know, we were down for most of it. We ended up tying the game. And then we're into overtime, and we took a too many men penalty, which obviously is the last thing you need. I think one of our D had jumped on and obviously wasn't supposed to. They're young, right? They're in overtime. Maybe this is the biggest game they've ever played in, so the emotions are high. And I think the biggest thing on the bench was just, you know, keeping them confident, keeping them calm. And I think at that age, it was huge and beneficial that the three of us standing behind them had been in these moments. We'd played in these moments, and we're just reassuring them, like, you know, you're doing okay, like you're doing well. Take a deep breath, instead of, you know, us panicking like, holy cow, we're in overtime now, we're shorthanded again. So I think managing the emotions was the biggest thing in that game for sure. And I even remember for myself, like when they called that too many men, I was like, holy cow, what is going on? Like, we need to calm down. So I kind of just like stepped off the bench and called the ref over, and it was really just for me to take a deep breath. Like I needed to regroup, regather my thoughts. Like, and so the ref came over, and I was just like, oh, too many men. All right, so we need to put someone in the box. And she was just like, yeah, like, but it was more just like, all right, like, let's calm down, right? Like, let's take a deep breath here. And so step back up on the bench, and we go into a PK, and we killed it off, and we ended up winning in overtime. And I think, you know, that was the trouble heading into that game, was that the Americans had just lost to the Swedes right before us. So our girls are at the rink, and they're watching this game. And so I think all game they were kind of playing scared to lose. They had just seen a big upset. And at that age, I think it really, really affected them heading into that game. Their mentality was, you know, we're scared to lose, not we're going to win, or we're going to do the little things and we're going to win. So I think that we definitely, you know, again, like any advice, of how to handle those kind of situations, because they are young. And, do you want to talk about how we know we're scared heading into this game because of what we just saw? Or do we want to just, rally the troops and stick to our game plan? So that was a tough thing that we battled with. And obviously it showed throughout that game. Just, we were scared to lose. We were scared to do what just happened to the Americans. So thankfully we won in overtime there against the Finns. And, once that game was over, I just knew there was no chance that we were losing the next day versus the Swedes. Like, the team that we had was just incredible. So much skill. The leadership was amazing. We had 7 returners that had just won a gold medal in August in Wisconsin at the last under-18 World Championships. They knew what it took to win. They were amazing leaders. They stayed calm throughout. And I think leaning on them in those tough moments against the Finns, helped with their confidence and their growth as leaders heading into the game versus the Swedes. And then, the puck dropped versus the Swedes, and before we knew it, we were up, 5-0 heading into the second period. And so I think obviously that helps. That's a little bit of a relief, but then, keeping our foot on the gas was the biggest thing. But I definitely think one of our biggest struggles and bumps that we passed was watching the Americans before us. And so I'd love to, how would you have approached that? Or if anyone has any thoughts, or I would love to hear.
Sure, and if as always, like, if people have questions, feel free to put your hand up. So, like you just mentioned, that your team watches Sweden upset the U.S. and so was there some talk or strategy between you, Steph, and Tara about? You mentioned, like, do we mention it? Do we not mention it? Do we just proceed like it didn't happen? How did you handle it as a staff and as a team going into your game against Finland?
Yeah, I think our approach was, all right, like, not even to give recognition to it, and just to focus on what we had done to this point, what has made us successful, how are we going to stay out of the box, how are we going to stick to our habits. So that was our approach, heading in, like, let's just focus on us. Right. And I think, was it right? Was it wrong? Who knows? If we did something else, could it have helped? Maybe, but maybe it would have made it worse. Right. So it's kind of, and they're at that age where they're affected by the outside world. Right.
Yeah. And sort of similarly, like you mentioned, the penalty trouble. And you mentioned, sorry, Perry, I know Perry well, but you mentioned Perry's helpful advice is to not take as many penalties as you're taking. Thank you for that, Perry. But so how did you guys talk to the group about that? Was there any kind of trick or tool that you remember using, or the language you used about? Obviously it's the pink elephant thing. If you talk about, if you say, hey, don't take a penalty, it's very likely somebody's going to go take a penalty because that's what they're thinking about. Do you remember how you actually addressed it with the team specifically?
Yeah, so we did mention, possessing the puck, not following through with our checks, but like rubbing out. Obviously, we don't play checking, so we shouldn't be out there throwing the body. But we really didn't want to pull back from how aggressive we were being, because it does make a difference. It does help us possess the puck if we're going in there and, we are bumping them off it. Like, both teams are being physical. And so honestly, our approach was like, all right, well, if this is how it's going to be, let's have a good PK. It's tough because you don't want to say, we're being too physical, and then now they're playing soft and now we're losing battles. And like, it's hard at that age and at that time of year. They're coming from their junior hockey, which isn't as physical, it isn't as fast. And so to even get them to this point where they are playing physical, like, that's what we wanted, that's what we had pushed for. So I feel like we would be, kind of going against what we'd been preaching the whole time, as being physical. So we just kind of spent more time on PK and touched up in all the areas that we thought we could be better at.
Okay, go ahead, Wally.
I just wanted to see if Kim McCullough was on.
Yes, she is.
And if she had any questions, I think Kim's had lots of experience in the female game, and Courtney, in many of our presentations before, Kim has spoken about the importance of physicality and how to teach it to kids who tend to be, young girls and boys who tend to be shy. And then when they get to your level, we don't know where that line is or how to play it. So I just wanted to introduce Kim, and if she had any questions. But Kim, the idea of physicality with the kids, and then moving up to the game today on the female side, it still appears to be something they have to deal with, as it did seem to cost Canada in the World Championships this year at the end of the game. So, Kim, please. Thank you.
Hey, Wally. Hey, Courtney. How are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I started teaching physicality, like even with our U9 rep team, and it's funny because they, we were teaching them stick lifts and hunting. Those were the words we were using with these little 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. And then I started doing a warm up before the game where they would bump into each other. Like we're like literally about to go on the ice, and they would just like hit each other with all their equipment on, and like go, and then they'd immediately go on the ice and like possess the puck because the other team was getting knocked on their butts, right? So it was like a power of suggestion was good. Obviously, with the junior kids, having coached junior for a long time, that could be a little bit more damaging when they run into each other at full tilt. But I do think in general, and this is my experience in minor hockey, the big girls are scared about taking big girl penalties. And then perhaps when they're at U11 and U13 age groups, maybe their coaches are messaging negatively to them that they are being too physical or too aggressive because they don't want to kill a penalty. I don't know how many of you have watched U11 and U13 girls hockey, but power plays aren't exactly lethal. And quite often the penalty kill scores more often than the power play does. So I don't agree with that mindset with a lot of coaches, but often when players are physical, the coaches are speaking to them negatively about it. And I think that mindset at a young age can be very difficult. But I agree, Courtney, I think you have to use the physicality to your benefit. You certainly don't want to shy away from anything. And I forget what the term is, right? They use for Team Canada, the power kill idea of if you take one, you're going to maybe try to go get one when you're killing. So, but I think it's largely the mindset and what the coaches are saying. Like if you're playing scared, or if you're telling your players don't take penalties, as Tim said, that suggestion of don't do that means, of course, now they're going to do that. But I think teaching at a really young age has been really valuable for our players. And, the young kids can get away with a lot. The small kids can get away with a lot. So I think it's to their benefit to be more physical, because sometimes they can't just possess the puck with a stick lift if the kid outweighs them by 20 pounds. So that's my 2 cents, Wally. Good to see you.
Courtney and Kim, back in the day before you all were born, Dave King had created a number of progressions related to the how-to of gaining control of the puck. Free puck race progression, stationary puck protection battles, pre-contact, gaining the lane, that kind of thing. And I really think those elements are vital in the teaching part of physicality. And when I watch the guys play and some of the penalties they're taking in the NHL playoffs, they're taking themselves out of the play, let alone losing ice time. So in terms of physicality, the degree of contact on the men's side borders on stupidity, because they are trying to intimidate versus play the puck and lose D side too often. So I think the puck possession thing is bang on. I love your 6 habits. And one of the things that impressed me with the national program was preparation, the planning. And Hockey Canada and the staffs have done a great job at working on those little details. And it's a lot easier, actually, in short-term competition to get the ducks in order and get everybody to toe the line. But on a club team, behavior can tend to go south, and you always seem to be dealing with things repeatedly, and in terms of getting everybody to push in the right direction. So, Courtney, I was really curious about how you got into coaching to begin with, like that transition, and how you sort of fell into it, and what the difference was.
Yeah, so right out of college, I started coaching Bantam North York Storm. And I was, supply teaching, but also training to be on the national team. So it was kind of just something fun that I thought, why not give back to the game that's given me so much. So that's really how it started. And then from there, I just fell in love with, making connections with those young girls, telling them my experience, giving them my advice on, things that they need to do, and obviously helping them, transition, from Bantam to midget to junior, looking for scholarships. So from the Bantam level, I went up to midget. I coached in Oakville for quite some time with Jim Nyhus. And then those girls went off to junior. And then I ended up coaching the Toronto Furies in the CWHL. I know, like, the job came up, and I was actually just had retired in 2017, and I was like, why not? Why can't I coach at that level? And I thought, the challenges that I was going to face were, I was, similar in age. I played with or against tons of them. I, had been to bars with quite a few of them. So I think, making that transition into, okay, like, is this going to be my career? And if it is, then I need to make sure I do this professionally. And I think just the respect that I had from those players really, gave me the confidence that, maybe I'm good at this. Maybe I could do this for life. And it was pretty humbling and rewarding to have the respect from, Sarah Nurse, Renata Fast, Natalie Spooner, players that I had played with on Team Canada, had tried out against for years, and to be able to stand behind them and have their respect, and them listening to, whatever I might be throwing at them from a game side of things, was so humbling. And so at that point, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I moved on to the NCAA with Princeton, where I'm at still right now, and I just continue to grow as a human, interacting with all these young women, and just seeing how mature they are, the way they handle themselves and carry themselves, and they're professional day in and day out. And obviously here at Princeton, the academics is quite high. And so just to see how they can, get one of the best educations in the world and play at the top level for their age is pretty incredible. And to have even the smallest impact on them. I think that's why we all coach. We love the relationships we make. We love the, helping them in any way we can, even if you touch, 1-2 kids a year. I think that's really why we do it. We obviously love the X's and O's, and we can all talk for hours about hockey, but at the end of the day, we show up for those players because we love those relationships. We love making an impact. And so I think that's truly what I love most. And it's pretty incredible that there's so many opportunities now for coaching in women's hockey, that it can be a career. So that's really exciting. I think, one of the biggest things that I've learned transitioning from being a national player to coaching is every player ticks for certain reasons. And like you said, it's easy to corral a team in 2 weeks because you're going for this gold medal. So, there's that quick instant gratification, but how do you corral a team, throughout a year, throughout a season, and how do you pull everyone in and make them committed and love each other and strive for the same goal? And I think as coaches, our job is to find what makes each player tick, and everyone is different. But if you can figure out what makes them show up to the rink every day, and what they love and what they care about, and just kind of reaching out to them, you're going to create a culture and environment where everyone feels valued and excited to be there every day, and excited to be on the ice, even though they were, doing academics for 8 hours that day before they got to practice. And so I think just genuinely caring about each one of your players just goes miles and miles in the women's game.
And I think, Court, it's really yet another example or yet another lesson that a lot of young coaches have to learn. You seem to have learned it early and maybe started with that approach that, yeah, the X and O's are important. There's an element of that that's really important to any team, but before that, and more importantly than that, it's the relationship thing. Heard it my whole career, but took me really a long time to realize that that is more important than the X and O's, to create that connection within the team, between the team, socially, especially in the female game, but between coaches and players, and getting to know and understand your players is really more important than telling them what to do. And we like to talk about on here to try to avoid telling them what to do, but help them figure out what to do by asking them questions. But it's just another really good example of how important that relationship building aspect is, and the sort of the Socratic mentoring aspect, which you would have learned about in your teaching courses at UNH, that asking is sometimes is often the best avenue to helping someone learn something, rather than just tell them, hey, do this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, one of the greatest things about the under 18 worlds was we want, like, you ask them to have this great environment, but what does that look like? Like, what are the steps to getting that? And I think we were, as a staff, we had played together, so we already had that chemistry. And you sit in a group and we share our stories with the girls, and Tara and I are kind of going back and forth how we were just fighting for a position against each other. And the players, they see that, and they see the connection that we share and that we shared, and how cool it is to now be their coaches, but having had been in their shoes, right? And so they're seeing this connection. And I think right there, they're, that culture, that environment that you want to create is apparent because it's within the staff. So if the staff can do it, it's going to trickle down into the group.
Absolutely. And what about, sort of your approach at Princeton with Cara? Maybe talk a little bit about that, like how you guys approach your jobs and your tasks there and your team building there.
Yeah, so it's funny because we actually just did some closing meetings, and I think coming off a year where our culture wasn't as great as we wanted it to be, and we obviously didn't have as many wins as we wanted. And I think when you win, everything seems great, but once you start losing, that's when your culture really shows. And the players talk a lot about holding people accountable. Well, what does that look like these days? Because there's a fine balance, right? There's a fine line, and at the end of the day, our jobs are on the line if it's too harsh, and if someone didn't like it. We all know how the world kind of is these days, so you got to kind of toe that line. But we like to, right when we get to campus in the fall, have these team building activities. Like one year we went rock climbing, we went to a Flyers game, we sat in a box, we did a little outreach, community service part where the girls, like younger girls, came on the ice, and our girls ran the session, and then we went to the Flyers game. So I think creating those connections outside the rink, and making the incoming class feel like they are part of this family, because some of these girls have been together for 3 years. So they're, the incoming class kind of comes in and they're a little bit on the outside for, the first few weeks. It's just natural because everyone knows each other. So how do you get them into the culture right away? And I think doing little activities, and the players did ask for even more of that, which is kind of funny because you don't know how much they really want to do it, or, are you wasting their time? They have academics, they have practice. So I think really finding that balance, of like too much or too little, it's kind of right there in the middle. But Kara is really great at team building and building a culture. That's something she takes pride in. She's done I think, tons of podcasts and interviews on how she creates a good culture. But again, I think it comes from the top. She meets with every single player once a month. And I don't think there's another coach out there that takes the time to meet their players once a month. And just, it's not even about hockey. It's, how is school? How is your family? It's, they're just sitting there chatting, and that goes a long way again, with that culture, that environment, making them feel valued and feeling like these coaches actually care about me, not just as a hockey player. So I think that's one really big thing we do here at Princeton.
Cool. And maybe talk a little bit about, I guess, both at Princeton and with your U18 experience on, we talk a lot about bench management here and how different coaches handle that. Do you have a philosophy yourself, you and Kara, and your staff going into U18s? How did you approach it with Tara and Steph?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, lucky enough, here in Canada, we have some very, very skilled athletes. And so I think, when you pick this team, you're picking players that you're gonna feel confident putting on the ice. So we were lucky in that aspect that heading into the tournament, we knew we were going to be able to play everyone. And I think that also is huge for that environment. You have them for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and making them feel valued, like I continue to say. But what we did end up doing was, we found our power play players, and then we tried to make sure that, if you weren't on the power play, you were on the PK. And of course, that doesn't always work out, right? Like, you're not just going to give everyone a role. You're at the World Championships. You need to play to win. But in that sense, obviously some people were kind of double agents playing power play PK. But for the most part, everyone had a role. And, if they weren't on the power play or PK, then, there's a role in, all right, at the end of our power play, this is the line that's going to go out and shut them down, because that's a big shift too. Right after the other teams had a power play, or right after we've had a power play, there's that energy burst from either side. And so we had a line that was their role. And I think just being open, honest, and clear with what their roles were. And, whether it be you're going to log a lot of time or maybe you're not, but like, here's your role. I think that they really appreciate that, just that communication. Everyone just wants to be heard and feel like they have a role. So that's kind of what we did at the World Championship side of things. And then at Princeton, I think it's a little bit more difficult. We have a little bit more players. We have 2 people that are scratched each game sitting in the stand. So how do you make them feel valued? How do you keep them, wanting it all year long? It is a long year. And so I think, we struggle with that because it's such a long season. And I think that we need to get our fourth line players a little bit more ice somehow. Like, you have to find ways. And I think, at Princeton, being the Ivy League, the drop off, it's pretty significant from your top forward to, your bottom forward, in the fact that we have financial aid and they have to, have the grades to get in. So we don't always get the top picks of the pool. And so I think it's, finding them ice time, and what does that look like? And again, just communication, having those meetings, talking with them, making sure they feel valued, and also making sure their teammates still value them, because your ice time shouldn't depict whether you get respect or not, right? Like, these players, they spend so much time together. Like, they need to love each other outside the rink too.
Absolutely.
Tim, Rick had his hand up. I'm wondering if Rick had a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask, yeah.
No, Rick just had an itchy finger on the wrong button.
Okay.
But thanks, Courtney, for all you're offering here.
Okay. My question is related to the long term, having extra players, having scratches. We talked to Scott Rivet, who coached Mount Royal College at the CIS championship this year. And during COVID, he had 27 players. And one of his proudest moments was in the previous season, 27 players, nobody quit. He was able to keep them positive, and I've always found that remarkable, because players just want to play. If you don't play, you really don't feel valued. Yesterday, I was talking to Carl McLeod about Team Czechia. And she talked about her fourth line minutes. And she said it was a challenge because of TV timeouts. Those minutes went down to 8 minutes a game. And she was sensitive to it. And I think being sensitive to it and being able to communicate on it was critical. But your fourth line, like I sort of operate on the philosophy of no TV times outs, 12 could be a max, 10, 12, I don't know. But you don't begin and saying you're trying to get this goal. You're going to read the game as it goes, coaching with your gut in terms of who's going and who's going to play situations. But the challenge of making a team come together. Back in our day in 2002, we had 10 penalty kill people, 10 power play people, and I don't like two people playing the same role, and we didn't at that time. But when we ran into penalties against the Americans, like 8 in the first period of the Salt Lake City final, yeah, Wickenheiser did get to go penalties to the point of exhaustion. They had to get some extra ice time, but I asked Danielle Goyette if she recalled getting any ice time. She didn't on the PK. So the art of coaching is, having a philosophy, consistently living by it, and realizing you can handle things internally. So it's I'm always really curious about this because in minor hockey, and I don't know that it occurs at the girls' level, but at the boys' level, whether it's U15 or U13, they just shorten their bench to win. They're not cognizant of the emotional impact and lack of development that occurs because power play people are always getting extra ice time, and they're going to be moving up the ladder used to extra ice time. And when they get to a national team, that doesn't happen. They become entitled. So to me, that's the precarious nature of coaching and dealing with things. And I'm wondering if anybody else on board can speak to this idea of managing a bench to create a team, and just the idea of what you went through with the U18 team, Courtney. You obviously had designated power play people and PK people, but how did you create that? And how did it come together? Was it before the tryout? You knew who it was? You had a good idea, or did you switch things up in the competition?
Yeah, I think, heading into the World Championships, I think we had an idea, but we weren't, we were willing to adjust because now it's been, 5 months since the last time we saw these players. At this age, so much development happens in 5 months, and we were ready to make changes. And so we went in with an idea, and it absolutely changed heading into so we had our exhibition game. After that, it definitely changed. And in our first game, we actually lost Jocelyn Amos, our captain, who was a dual agent, going to play on the power play and the PK, so logged some big minutes. So right then and there, you had to make adjustments. That's, a player that was going to log quite a bit of ice time. And we actually didn't get her back until the semis, and not even fully back. So then we made adjustments, and honestly, some people really impressed us with how much they bought into being a PKer. And so I think that's huge, by allowing them to see how important PKing is too. Everyone wants to be on the power play. They think they're going to score goals, but I think sometimes the power play is almost harder than the PK is, because it's hard to score goals. I think on the power play in women's hockey, I definitely think it's an area that we could focus on. So, finding value in that PK, and our players, as Kim had mentioned, kind of calling it the power kill, not the penalty kill. Finding a way to make them value that was huge. So I think there were a little bit of adjusting, between the exhibition game and the first 2 games, but heading into our third game and then through, we were pretty consistent with the roles that we found those players in. And yeah, definitely bench management. It helped. And then we ran into 14 penalties, which is 28 minutes in one game. So, now you're putting power play players out there because your PKers are just getting crushed. And so there's a lot of adjusting and juggling that goes into it.
Courtney, I wanted to mention a couple of things. Number one, in Ontario, working with Brian Hart, who I'm sure you know, and their Team Red and Team Blue having two teams at the U18 level, I believe my role at Hockey Canada back in the day was to guarantee they developed and they rolled the lines. And Ontario, for the most part, did that to a T. Everybody got to play power play. Everybody got to play the penalties. The outcome at the U18 level wasn't the case. I'm expecting now that Ontario has been a little more challenged. They may be scratching their head about the outcome, but the bottom line was for me was the national team and the Olympics. It's all about developing for the Olympics, whether it's U18, whether it's the World Championship team today. You use the term double agents at your level. And my philosophy is everybody plays all roles first half. They earn them. And the second half, then you create the roles and assign them. But there's flexibility within earning your ice time, maintaining it, and changing it. And when I watch our senior national team play, and over the years, I see Jenner and Poulin on both PK and power play against teams that we could roll the lines on. I think that takes away from the psyche of the team and the belief in the team rather than the dependence of the great players. So the World Championships that Canada won here in, I believe it was Canada. Poulin was injured, and they beat the Americans 6-1 without her in the lineup. And that was one of the few times that I said, yeah, this is what happens. The best team wins. So the idea of managing that bench, manipulating it, shortening it, I think the art of getting the most out of everybody is critical. In female hockey in Canada, we can roll the lines right up to the most of the teams. But when you're creating that power play only against the lesser teams, you're not creating a developmental mindset with the long-term outcome in mind, which to me is the gold medal. Tim, I got a question about 2006.
Well, Wally, Kim had her hand up, so let her interject. Okay. We'll go back to that.
Go ahead, Kim.
Thanks, guys. I just had two comments on bench management, more so in like the messaging and communication of it. One would be I often referred to the power play people as the slow it down players and the penalty kill as the speed it up players. I think those who've seen me play would argue I am definitely a speeded up player. I was not a power play player, but I was the player who go out there and create chaos and, got a lot of penalty kill minutes. So I think it's a different terminology, which I actually quite liked, because if I don't identify as a slow it down type of player. So I like being sort of that moniker of a speeded up player. Like that really spoke to me. I don't remember where I stole it from. I definitely didn't come up with that. But I thought, that's a way, maybe in minor hockey, like a different way to put it. If you do have, I know when I coached junior, I definitely had players who, were doing certain roles and not doing other roles. And that would sometimes be the way that I would message it to them. And depending on the kid, it seemed to resonate with a lot of them. And understanding that we're going to be a bit more patient on the power play. So you have to be a slow it down player. One thing I did in minor hockey, and I don't know if it would work at the national team level, but it'd be an interesting thought experiment. I think a lot in minor hockey, like the parents want their kid to be on the power play, right? We assume the players want to be on the power play. I think a lot of girls hockey players don't want to be on the power play because they're scared to be on the power play. So when I coached U15 AA, my first year as a head coach, I had them vote. Like they had to put up their hand if they could only choose one special team, which one they would want to be on. So we did this vote with, obviously the goalies don't get to vote. They have to be on both, but 15 skaters, only 4 of them said they'd prefer to be on the power play. 11 of them said they'd prefer to be on the penalty kill. So obviously, we played a 4-man power play. No, but I mean, it was interesting because, and some of the kids who I thought were my most skilled players didn't want to be on the, like if they had their choice. And it did come up a couple times in conversation with parents. They'd be like, oh, well, like, how come these players on the power play? I'm like, well, when we did this vote and the kids were honest, some of them actually said they didn't want to do it. I don't know why. I didn't necessarily pry with all of them. But I think our perceptions of what people value and what position they actually want to be in, everyone thinks they want to be on the power play, but they might see, and in girls hockey, again, the penalty kill is often drives the offense a little bit more than the power play, certainly up to I would argue, the U15 level. So that was just some thoughts that I had on maybe different ways to message those things with younger players. But I definitely use the speed it up, slow it down when I coached junior, which had been the same age group that Courtney was coaching at Worlds. And I don't know, they seem to identify with it a little differently. That maybe hadn't been explained to them that way before.
Kim, I have a question for Tim. Tim, 2006, in my mind, was the best, most dominant national team Olympic performance ever. And I'm curious about the roles you created and how you managed the bench with that particular team, because from top to bottom, everybody seemed to produce and contribute. Can you talk to that experience? And it's a long time ago, but I think still has application to how we coach today and create synergy today. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, like Mel did a terrific job that year of, like you talk about, Wally, basically auditioning all the players for all the roles for a good chunk of our year. She would change roles, change assignments, so every player was put in kind of every role. So like power play roles, penalty killing roles, and even you're the extra players today where you're maybe not going to get a lot of power play penalty killing time. And it helped us in several ways. Number one, as Courtney mentioned, players can surprise you. We all have maybe little prejudices at times as coaches, and players can surprise you given an opportunity to perform. But so every game through that year until pretty late, maybe even into December, we left for Torino in third week of January. Going into every game, it would be, okay, Court, your line and Kim's line, you guys are going to be our power play groups today up front. And on defense, I'd have 2 power play or 2 D pairs that were going to be on the power play. The third D pair knew that their role was going to be penalty killing that day, and we would switch those every game. And, even up front, the lines would take turns being, sort of the third energy line, not playing as much. We could see how players reacted, both psychologically to being in a reduced role and physically. Could they give us their best in a reduced role? So Mel did a terrific job that year, sort of auditioning all the players for all the roles and learning a lot about the players and how they would handle those different roles going forward. And then going into Torino, we pretty much had 2 power play units, would be my memory, 2 power play units. But the beauty is, and I don't think we did have an injury, but the beauty is if everybody knows and understands and feels competent as a power play person, if there's an injury, really easy to slot somebody into a role to get some assistance. Same thing, penalty killing, like Court's situation at Worlds, 14 penalties in a game, and Wally's situation in Salt Lake City, 8 penalties in the first period. You can't leave your best players sitting on the bench for a whole period. They need to be involved And so it's really important, I think, as a coach, that all players gain an understanding of all the rules and be ready to fill those rules when you as a coach feel is the right time, or there's just a desperate need for the team to have you fill a role that you don't normally play. So, you know, Mel did a great job that way, well, that year, Wally in particular. And we did play 4 lines a lot, but we did have an energy line. Megan Augusta was one of our energy people at that point in time on the development front. Like, she was an extremely gifted offensive player, but she was one of our water bugs, we called them. That was our energy line, the 4th line. Go out there and create chaos through just, you know, use of your speed and your energy. So yeah, roles are really, really important, of course.
Courtney, we use the term transmit belief. That's a coach's job. And what Tim talked about is defining that line as an energy line and them embracing that role is critical. I experienced observing a midget AAA boys team this year. From the get-go, they identified the 2 skill lines. The 3rd unit was sort of the lines that could sort of half skill, half energy, and the 4th line was energy from the get-go. Consequently, the power play people were selected, and a lot of things were allowed during the season where the best players could take 1.5-minute shifts. And it all worked out to the detriment of the team by not leaving a sense of earning your role. And young players are going to evolve at that U18 level. They're going to evolve into roles if given the opportunity. And that's the thing that always intrigued me about national U18, 22 development team and senior teams. Everybody that makes those teams has been on the power play growing up. Everybody who's a forward usually played center. And they have to become a winger. And they have to, you know, that psychologically, it's a big adjustment to accept. So I think that's, it's really a part of the art of coaching right now. And in minor hockey, the biggest reason I'm on is try to wake up minor hockey coaches to managing a bench versus shortening it and building and transmitting belief doing that. So welcome, Sammy Joe. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the 1 hour and 7 minutes that we've been able to talk so far, and congratulations on a great job broadcasting. Courtney's been sharing her experience at the U18 Worlds that they won with an all-female staff, and it's just been excellent. So Sam,
anything off the top, Sammy, that you'd like to ask Courtney about her experiences so far?
Well, first off, hi, Court.
Hi.
So I have to say that I hired Courtney with the Toronto Furies, and that was probably one of the best choices I ever made in management. I was pretty lucky to get her. The league did not want me to hire her because she was so young. And my basic premise was, in men's hockey, you don't hold the age against the guy. So why do it in women's hockey, right? And so she did what I thought was the smartest thing and surrounded herself with great mentors around her that could help her through sort of navigating that first year professional. And I was pretty fortunate. I feel like we would have still been the dream team had the Furies still existed, unfortunately, but we all had to part ways. And so the Furies coaches still all get together once a month, minus Courtney, and sometimes we FaceTime her and sometimes we just take pictures. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. That was a great group, and I'm sure you guys heard a lot of great things from Courtney. I can't wait to see the recording, but yeah, I can't say enough about what a great coach she was. That's it. That's my diatribe.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So Court, maybe just chat a little bit about because it's about your transition from playing forward, because you were a tremendously skilled and gifted, like big, strong power forward, and I think it's arguable that you may have had a bigger, better national team presence and career had you stayed as a forward. So how does that, because it's a really difficult transition. I mean, I believe in the middle of your career at UNH, like, you know, Brian either asked you or maybe it was out of necessity for you to play D, but that's a really, really tough transition at that level. So maybe talk a little bit about that. Like, how did it happen? What were the challenges for you? And did you like, what did you like or not like about it?
So my second year of college, we were kind of struggling a little bit as a team. We couldn't really break the puck out. And at UNH, we played on this ginormous ice, which I loved because I was a great skater. So it fed right into my, I guess, things that I'm good at. So we couldn't get the puck out. And so Coach McCluskey, he was like, hey, like, we need you to break the puck out for us. So we're going to put you back on D. And so that's kind of how it started. And it went really well. Our team went on I think 16-game winning streak. We ended up ranked number 8 nationally or number 7 nationally that year. So we're heading into the quarterfinals. And then there was a point where I was playing forward and D in the same game. And then I wasn't doing great at either because I was playing 2 positions, one shift after the next. And so I remember him pulling me in being like, you're not performing, like, what's going on? And I was like, it's really hard to play forward one shift and then D the next and then forward the next and then D the next. So like, can you just pick and choose what you want me to play? Like, and so he was like, well, we kind of we need you at defense right now. So I was like, all right, that's fine. Like, I'll play D, but I'm learning all these new things on how to play defense. So I think it's, I need to practice it. I can't just be jumping up and back. So we had decided like, all right, I was going to finish the year at defense. And then obviously I was with the under 22 program at the time playing forward. And so Mel Davidson was kind of like, well, what are you going to be? Like, we need to know. And I had a similar conversation. Well, like, where do you see me doing better in the national program? And, obviously she didn't have, rightfully so, couldn't give me a direct answer, but, I thought about it and I really liked, being the quarterback almost there on defense, being able to see the whole ice, breaking that puck out, skating it. I thought as a forward, I was a pretty, I like to score goals, but if a D jumped in, I was covering for them. I was always, reading the play as that forward. And so I thought that my transition back to D would be a little bit easier because those were my strengths. So I ended up choosing D and, continuing to learn. And I think, I always think about, well, what if I continued on forward? Where would my path have been? But, I think it's in hindsight, I still, I went to 3 world championships. I was an alternate for the 2014 Olympics. So, a pretty good run. And I think I learned a ton about the game. And I think it benefits me as a coach having played both sides of the game. So.
Any particular challenges for you in making that transition? What did you find most difficult, maybe?
2-on-1s, 1-on-1s. I remember being in those situations initially being just like, like, what do I do here? And I think just, holding a good gap, trusting your backward skating, trusting your pivots, your agility, those kind of things. I think that a lot of D, still continue to struggle with naturally. Like, as you get older, you kind of start trusting your feet a little bit more. So I think that was a big thing. But I think just maintaining gap and continuing to have confidence with that puck on breakout as I went up through the stages of, to the national program where the game was better and faster.
Yeah. And just before you interject, Wally, because it is a little bit of a problem from my perspective in the female game, where, especially at the younger level, if you have a really, really good player, the tendency seems to be, hey, we need help scoring. Let's move a really, really good, effective, skilled skating D and put her at forward because it will help us score. And I always thought there, in some ways the opposite might be true, where a really good, if I could have one or the other, I might want a really good, effective defenseman who get the puck out consistently and give us a chance to create offense. But seems to be a little bit.
You might be a little biased, Tim. You might be biased.
Yeah, might be. Yeah. But because I made the transition myself as a 16, 17-year-old. I was a forward until then, and then had to learn all the tricks of the trade as a defenseman, sort of being a bit player on my junior team. But go ahead, Wally.
Courtney, I believe I was scouting at the time you were playing in those Worlds games, and I got to evaluate you, and I always felt you were the player that could contribute to the female game on defense because you had offensive skills. But there's one thing I noticed that, and I commented on it, and I think I might have I edited video of you against the Americans, and I thought your stick was too long to handle the puck against the Americans only. All the other games, the speed and space was fine, but against the Americans, it was different. The reason I have a bias is I went to Chicago's camp and was going to quit after the first skate because I was embarrassed, like truly embarrassed. I couldn't keep up with the speed. I was a drill destroyer, and I decided to cut 4 inches off my stick. And I survived the camp. I didn't quit, and I've stayed with it ever since. And I really believe with anybody aspiring, moving up the ladder to the next level, if the speed is greater, you have to handle the puck at greater speed and make decisions faster. So I felt, just from my role as the head scout and playing a role in looking at development across the country with every branch, I always advocated proper stick length. And it's been a big topic with all the coaches here and over many years. So go ahead, Sammy.
Well, first I want to say that Court should have made the national team. I think she was she was far before the right era. Like right now, if you had the skills you had then now, you'd be on the national team as second. But that's not the way. The national team was so defensive defensemen that made the team then, and now they're all you. Like they're all just like you. But on the stick length issue, I was watching actually the Kess and whatever podcast where they were interviewing Abby Rock about her stick length, and the stick length on Abby Rock is up above her head, and she is one of the best players in the entire world. She's obviously a short player, and she has the longest stick on Team USA. So when I was up in the broadcast booth, Ellen Hughes came over. So Ellen played on the 1992 team for Team USA, but more importantly is the Hughes mother to the 3 famous boys. And I said to her, like, look at Abby Rock's stick. Like, it looks like she's like skating around with this like giant thing. And yet she's able to play in tight and everything. And she said all 3 of her sons have gone to a longer stick too. It's the way that the NHL is going. And I found that intriguing, that was so different than what I had heard. So maybe Courtney, you can talk a little bit about that, because I feel like maybe that's the way it's going. Not just for defensemen, but like forwards digging in deep.
It's kind of funny. I've actually never heard that this was a big topic, stick length. And I never got that recommendation that I should cut my stick, although I do play with a shorter stick now, which is funny. I mean, I think everyone's different and everyone's going to be successful in their own ways. And I think you have to have quick hands. And if you don't have quick hands, then you probably shouldn't have a long stick. But I didn't know it was a big topic. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think, Sammy, it is true for sure in the last I'm going to say 12, 15 years again, since the advent of everybody going to composite sticks and everything. The emphasis is on, especially on the guys' side, longer sticks because you can shoot it harder, quicker, with a quicker release and a shorter release. But I think the main point for all the young coaches out there, and I'm a real believer, and everybody's heard me say this before, is that the crucial thing is when you're learning to play, up until sort of, 13, 14 years old, that you do have a stick that's a proper stick length physiologically, and that would be really no higher than your chin when you're standing in your skates, because it does allow you to develop the proper technique to pass and shoot and protect the puck, and it helps enhance, as Wally knows, good skating posture. So that once you get to be 13, 14 years old, I think it's fine to sort of experiment and migrate to a longer stick if you'd like that. There are certainly, as Courtney said, exceptions. Brad Marchand has a very long stick, and he's a fabulous player. And last night watching highlights, Barkov in Florida, same thing, really long stick, but really skilled player. It's not for everybody, but it's definitely much more difficult for a young player to enjoy the game and develop their game if their stick is too long. And I think that's the main message, I think, out there for all the young coaches, maybe.
Also, the message is that no coach ever told Courtney that, when all the coaches talked about it, but nobody said anything.
Yeah, it's interesting. It came up very, very late. Like Wally had, I think it was during the 2014 run up to Sochi, Wally, that you really noticed it for the first time.
Well, I've really tracked this addendum for many, many years. Tim, your point of getting a right start, and I use that term, Courtney, right start. Kids are playing hockey for the first time, and they go, parents go, and back in the day, it was maybe the mouth for forwards, the nose for chin, or nose for forwards. And in every coaching clinic I do, I talk about a right start and Howie Meeker's research on it, the biomechanics of learning to get that knee bend, manipulate the stick with a puck on it around your body is critical to development. So I agree, the flex sticks are, and these players are doing what they're doing at the highest level. At the highest level, Sammy, I was more impressed with the so-called B pool team play than I was the top two teams. So I'm not of the thought that, gee, it's great hockey, because to me, it's getting to be like guys hockey. It's more 1-on-5 hockey. They're not passing the puck. The NHL is the standard of play today. They can use whatever stick length they want. They're comfortable with it. They can execute at that speed and tempo, or they wouldn't be there. But I find a right start not only on stick length, but the top hand grip. Many top hand grips are under grips. The V is not on top and burying the shaft. And you've got to get this right at a young age, teaching at a young age. And that's what the majority of us on here have worked in minor hockey, and we attend to those things at the right time. So it's interesting that it came up, because I may have been the only one fixated on that with you when you were playing defense. And actually, I'm not sure what year Dan Church coached, but I brought it up with Dan. He said he didn't think it was a problem, but I just looked at video and looked at the games and the ones against the Americans, and I said it would make a difference. But that's long gone. And Sammy, I absolutely agree with you. Of all the players, I thought she would be a star today. So
go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I just had a little hack I discovered this year for getting that V on the top hand, because I'm coaching 8-year-olds, 7 and 6-year-olds. And my daughter is one of those ones who wants to flip the hand over. Is if you just, all the gloves have that like padding. I have like 10 pairs of hockey gloves downstairs, but like the little piece of padding that goes there, if you put a piece of colored tape on that padding, it'll stick on there. And then you're telling the kid to line up the color pad with the top of their stick, right? So it's like the V and that, like that all sings to us, but maybe not, like for sure my 6-year-old daughter was looking at me like I was a crazy person. So I put a piece of green tape there, and then I would say, make sure your tape is on the top. And then it fixed it for the majority of the kids. So I stole that off another coach I met, but I thought that was an interesting way to do it. Obviously, maybe you don't keep it on that long, but it allowed them to fix it without us like adjusting them. So
yeah, good visual aid to like line it up with the shaft and get it in the proper position. Yeah, good idea.
Sammy, I just wanted to compliment you on the broadcast crew on the job during the Worlds. It's when I watch NHL hockey, I just watch in between periods, the interviews, particularly with the ladies on that, were in our era of play, and they tend to see the game in a more cerebral way and an analytical way, and it really impresses me. So, Courtney, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, that the first NHL team to have a woman on the bench is going to be a very successful team, because the attention to focus on detail, but the emotional intelligence and sensitivity of the influence of coaches on the players is something that I think men lack a little bit compared to women. And I'm really happy that you came on, Courtney, and got to see that you're involved in coaching. And do you have any long-term goals, like national team coaching goals or professional coaching goals, or are you just happy
Pro
to
hockey,
be in your
right?
secure
Yeah.
student-athlete coaching environment?
Wally, trust me, I've asked her lots of times.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that the women can all just come together and be in one fantastic league. I think that's what our sport needs. I think that's what our fans need. And I think, that would be something I definitely want to be a part of, and get our gang back together with Sammy, working under Sammy. Somehow, some way, one day, Sammy, we will be back together. And I really look forward to that. But I definitely think that. And yeah, I mean, I think I'll see where my career goes here with the national program. I'd love to be on the bench one day at the Olympics, but to coach at this young age with these under 18 girls, it's so rewarding, and they're the next generation of players that are going to come up into our national program. So developing them is something I take pride in as well. But yeah, one day, hopefully, I'll be behind that Olympic bench.
Good for you. Now, we've got a lot of people on. I'm not sure if they have any questions or not, but they coach at different levels. I'd like to introduce Hal Terse and give a bit of his background, because he's been there, done that over many years in Minnesota and with USA Hockey. And Hal has experience coaching women on boys' teams. And I don't know, Hal, if you've coached just women's teams, but go ahead, Hal, introduce yourself.
Yeah, good morning, or maybe afternoon, depending where you are now. Hi, Courtney. Congratulations. You're wise beyond your years as a coach. I've been coaching for 52 years, and from NCAA all the way down. Well, yes, I coached a JV high school team, girls, 2 years ago, and the U15 girls that moved up into that program the year prior to that, which was the pandemic year. And I found that to be a very, very interesting experience. Once I adjusted from coaching boys high school to, well, girls high school, but girls start playing high school. at 13 and 14, and the boys and I'm in Minnesota, and so the boys don't start. Most of them don't start playing high school till 10th grade. So they're 15, 16 or whatever that is. So anyways, I've enjoyed listening to all this. The next generation coming along. I have a granddaughter who's going to start playing hockey this year. So I think she's 4. So her parents are being told it's already too late, but I know that isn't the truth. I've had a wonderful time being part of this group, and every week this was my favorite hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours of the week. So good luck to you, Courtney, and your career. And Sammy's awesome, and you guys, you will get together again. I can tell. So that's all I got.
And Court, like I don't know how much time you have. Thanks for the hour and a half so far. Have you got a few more minutes, or do you need to run and go recruit somebody? Your next Sarah Filter.
I have a few more minutes. My little guy just woke up, so I can just hear him screaming, running around. But I have a few minutes.
Okay, so I was a little bit curious. Like we all love the 6 focus points with the U18 team. Do you have something similar, you and Kara at Princeton, that you really focus on with your group there?
We don't actually have 6 points, which is kind of interesting. I know when I went into the summer, it was actually, I think, Tara, Howie, and the group that was there before, the under 18s, they had started that in the summer, and I was like, that's fantastic, just to narrow in on 6 habits. So that's kind of where I picked that up and ran with that. We have, some values that we have in our locker room, kind of that we stand for. 2 hardworking ones, 2 where you kind of just show up and compete and you're respectful, that we kind of follow. And every summer we get a book, and that's kind of how we kind of come up with our motto each year. The girls read a book and they come up with our team motto, or what we're going to be identified as for that year.
What were some of the books that you've read as a group?
This is going to be let me think. You put me on the spot here with my mom brain these days. It was Angela Ducksworth. There was I think it was Grit. Yeah. So that was our book this year. The year before that we read I think it was is it 21 Habits to a Good Teammate or something along those lines. So kind of just books that get them thinking, a little bit bigger picture than just hockey. Like, how can we care for each other? What shows respect? Just showing up for each other. And Choose to Climb was our big motto in 2019-20. And I think that was a great motto, just every day choosing to continue to work hard, no matter how big that mountain kind of is. And again, at the Ivy League, I think there's a lot more stress factors that go into their lives than just playing hockey. And so I think that was a great motto that year.
And was that, I'm guessing, was that the year you rock climbed as a team builder?
Yeah.
It would have fit really well. Go ahead, Wally.
I just had to mention that when the national Canadian team centralizes, that's a long time together. It's a whole different ball game there. They play in a AAA midget hockey league, so it's realistic relative to preparation. But one of the most important things I remember, Tim, and it might have been the Torino year, I'm not sure. I was working with scouting and player development, but I happened upon a sign in Calgary where I was coming to a crosswalk, and the city had built these sort of billboards at the crosswalk. Look out for each other. And that was sort of the line that became put on the t-shirts and the sweaters and the back of the team. So those things are extremely important, that they go into the team building that you do, and the trust and respect you have to care for each other and actually love each other to get through the season and the journey. And we've talked about that often on this group. And I'm going to see if Kim's got something to add here. Go ahead, Kim.
Thanks, Wally. Yeah, actually, I had a question, Court, about, obviously when you're recruiting players for Princeton or with the U18 national team, like what are the skills that you see as like differentiators that are like sort of cementing players' spots and teams? Or I guess the flip side of that is, what are the skill areas that you really see as missing? Like, oh my gosh, if all these girls could come in at this Team Canada event or into their first year at Princeton with this, like, is there something missing, or is there something that is like really making players stand out that they've developed in their minor hockey career?
That's a great question. I think just from, watching the midget level or the under 18 and the junior and then heading into the national program, I think one of the biggest areas, like for me at least personally, is does the puck progress with that player or does it end? Are you putting your teammate in a better spot or are you turning everything into one-on-one? So, you watch a lot of these junior games and you see a lot of these players, oh, they have great hands and they're toe dragging and they're successful at that age. But at the next level, there's no way that's going to work. So that puck's not progressing with them. It's ending with them. And I think that's a really big thing. And with those triangle plays, one of those habits that we had talked about, how are you creating 2-on-1s around the ice? So that includes the support player needs to be in an area where that player can make a pass with the puck. So I think that's a really big thing because nowadays everyone's jumping on the ice and doing all these individual skills, but they're not working on how to attack space to create space or how to support a player, how to, pull the D in, be patient and allow someone to come into that space before you move that puck. So I think that's a really big thing that I focus on when watching at that age group. And I definitely think it's a deficit in our game these days.
Courtney, I'm going to introduce Tom Malloy. Tom has coached every level. He's coached women college, men's university, won a national championship with his college teams, coached both men and women. But last year he coached with Cassie Campbell and his son, who is a lawyer, a U13 girls team in Calgary. And he's moving up to U15 girls, and he's coached midget AA and AAA girls before. But he did something this year that relates to what you've suggested. Like watching boys hockey is hard because it's 1-on-5 hockey. And Tom's U13 team played in a boys league this year, one of two teams in the city of Calgary. And the most important thing that they don't do is pass. It's all toe drag. It's all try to do it yourself. And when they aren't even aware of options, let alone people trying to get open for them. So I'm going to ask Tom. I don't know if where are you? There you are, Tom, to talk about the mother who kept track of passes and the count. And you followed up with a Flames game because of that experiment, but you simply outpassed teams and managed to get to the city final. And Tom's a let the game teach philosophy guy, pure hockey sense. So go ahead, Tom, introduce yourself and tell your story this year and in terms of Courtney's identification of the lack of hockey IQ.
Courtney, it's been great listening to you. My biggest influencer was Johanni Wallsten in Finland. He was captain of Finland for years, kind of started the way they coach now. And his whole philosophy as a game is a greatest coach. And we worked together for years. And I've gone down to the States, Pennsylvania, there's this coach called Court Dunn, and I got the idea of tracking the passes from him, and that's the only stat he worries about. And at the end of the game, everybody knows who made the most passes, etc. And anyways, I've always thought of the passing. I knew that everybody we played would just be 1-on-5, 1-on-5. So the biggest thing we did is always create a defensive 2-on-1. The back pressure. We always back pressure the puck carrier so the D could stand up, and you know, the puck got turned over all the time. And a couple of games this year we gave up 5 shots. But I have a really ADD almost mother that was there all the time. So I thought I'll ask her to do some stuff because she'll do everything. So I gave her the big rink board, and she kept track of all the shots, you know, the number of the person shooting in both teams, circle the goals. And she also kept track of all the passes. She could do all this plus cheer on the game and yell instructions to all the players at the same time. So anyway, she did a great job, and every period she took with her phone, she took a picture, and then she'd send me the picture every period, so I get a little idea of, you know, it showed me a lot of things, where shots are coming from and who's moving the puck. But from Johanny, I learned all kinds of things, like start off with, we play games, but the rule is there has to be at least one pass made in each zone. And then we'll go to a 2-second game, you know, and I have a duck call that I got the idea from Wally. And a lot of times another team is practicing, so whistles are going. So the duck call, if they carry the puck too long, I blow it, and then the other team gets it. And we play a lot of games where they have to make an escape move when they get the puck before they're allowed to pass, and just promote promote the passing all of the time, and you know, talk about the passing. And so anyways, we averaged about 55 passes a game. Our best was 66, and we played 45-minute games. And our lowest, when we didn't play that well, we were down in the 30s in this. So I decided to count the passes in a Flames game. And the first period, I think, was 90 passes. Second period was just over 100. And then they had a lead, and they kind of set on the lead, and the passes dropped to about 30 from there, because they were doing the flip out of the zone instead of moving the puck. But at the higher levels, the puck just moves so quickly, and you can't get to 2. You go 1,000, 1, and they've already passed the puck. And that's a big. I play with quite a few ex-NHLers and all this. And they say the biggest difference is the passing and receiving. Like, they do not miss passes. They take passes in their skates. They take backhand passes. It's like they got glue in their sticks. And they really face the play a lot. Like, watch Crosby. He's always turning, facing the play in the kind of the triple threat position there, so he can do all kinds of things instead of the weak. When NHLers make a weak backhand, it's picked off every single time. So that's always been an emphasis when I coach, is that part of the game. Because, you know, like Tarasov says, the puck has no lungs. It doesn't get tired. It goes through small spaces, and it moves more quickly than anybody can skate. So that's kind of the theme of the way I coach offense. That's my little spiel.
And sort of hand in hand with that, and Tom knows this very well, because he was involved. You know, Court, back when I was coaching the men at University of Calgary, we had a fellow who was a friend of the team, kind of like Tom's parent. His name was Stuart Behe. And what he did for us, and it was really, really interesting, and I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it started with Bob Murdoch helping Willie Desjardins out at U of C just before me. But Court, what we had that year was Stuart kept track of what we called a plus minus with the puck. Stuart would watch the game with a dictaphone, and he would literally give every player a plus or a minus every time they touched the puck. You know, and it didn't have to be a tape-to-tape pass necessarily to be a plus. Like, if you as a D you were in a tight space under pressure, and the right play was maybe to chip it out or to dump it in coming through the neutral zone. That was still a plus, unless there was a blatantly obvious, D-to-D pass you could have made to keep possession. So we did that plus minus with the puck and gave the forwards a target of, 70%. We wanted the forwards to make 70% positive decisions in a game, and the D try to get to 85% positive touches, decisions, and executions. And it was a really, really, really interesting study. Stuart did a big, huge spreadsheet, every player, all these categories, turnovers, and to your point, when does the play end with a player? And is there a player that consistently, turns the puck over or just needlessly gives it away to the other team? So it was a really, really interesting study and fascinating stuff that we could draw from it, including, power play. Obviously, you've got the puck more, and we knew that we would need to make, I think it was, if I remember correctly, 8 to 10 positive touches on average with the puck per minute on the power play in order to generate scoring chances. It was really, really interesting. So we played.
Murdoch played with Stuart and I on a men's team, and he told us about that, and he said that's the only stat. He was coach of the year for Winnipeg, and he said the only stat he cared about was that. And he said if the team made 60%, pluses, you had a good chance of winning. 65%, you probably clobbered the other team, and below 60%, you're probably going to lose a game. So you never want to be the last, like Courtney said, you don't want to be the last one to touch the puck. You got to continue the play on, and that was the big thing about that. It shows a lot about all that kind of thing. And the thing about Stuart, he's an engineer, so he could do this and have all these charts and everything that nobody else in the world could do, I'm sure. But he's a pretty smart guy.
Anything in particular you guys focus on at Princton, Court, or that you did with the U18 team statistically?
Statistically, I would say one of the biggest things we focused on. So we did have a lot of shots, but were they quality? Or were you coming in outside the dots, just throwing the puck on, and then now technically that's a turnover because the other team's picking it up and they're breaking it out. So I think that's definitely an emphasis we put on, especially with the under 18 team, is teaching these players, what is quality versus quantity. And then also, you have all this possession time. Are you just throwing the puck on net and allowing them to break out when they're tired, or are we changing with possession and then getting a grade A scoring chance with our fresh players that come on? So not allowing them to change when we do have tons of possession in the O zone. So we didn't quite, I wouldn't say we tallied tracked it, but it was something that we definitely put emphasis on each and every game.
And did you try to and we all know it's difficult lots of times with the U18 team, you had your 6 habits. Did you try to track the stick lifts? Did you try to track the sort of the good box outs and that sort of thing, so you could give the players quantitative quality feedback in that way?
Yeah. So in August, which is, I think it's a 22-day camp, we started it right from the get-go, and every game we had, the coaches tally exactly what you're saying, all the stick lifts, all the box outs, all the pressure to contacts. They tallied them, and we ended up making it a competition. It was red versus white, the two teams, and each game they would see how many they had, and then there was a winner at the end of the 3-game series in camp. So that way we tallied it, and then when we moved into the World Championships, we more emphasized it with good video, watching themselves do these habits in the games. We didn't quite track them, tally them as much, but the video was of them doing these good habits and rewarding those people.
Yeah, awesome. It's so important for players. It's one thing for you as a coach to say, hey, Wally, you played great today. We really, if you could give them specifics, hey, you really had your feet moving, you had your feet moving in the back check, but you know what? You had 12 stick lifts today on the back check or whatever it was. It really, really helps players to get that feedback to feel good about themselves, and obviously it helps reinforce those habits with the team in particular. So yeah, really, really terrific. We probably should, unless you got one maybe last question, while we should let Courtney get on to her real life and take care of her little guy. And but if you had a last question, maybe Wally or anybody else. Anybody? So I'll I guess summarize and thank you again, Court, for coming on. It's been terrific. Say hi to Kara for me. Really enjoyed. I worked with her. Remember, it was I'm pretty sure it was a U18 camp, maybe 6-7 years ago. Really enjoyed her as a sort of co-coach. So say hello and. Good luck in the coming season. Good luck with the recruiting wars, and good luck with your career as it moves forward. Well, I'll see you at some point down the road. We all run into each other hockey-wise. So
yeah, thank you so much. This is great just to talk hockey. I mean, we all love it so much. We could do it for hours. So thank you so much.
And feel free to jump on any Thursday morning when you think of it, it's like, oh, geez, Sharks are on. We don't always, like Sammy does. She's pretty regular now, and Kim, and it's great to have the female perspective. You're so much brighter and smarter than we are as a group. So it's good to have you guys on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So great, guys and girls and ladies. See everybody next week, hopefully.
Thank you, Court.
Back in Calgary. So
thanks, Court. Sammy, before you leave, I want to ask you. Oh, she left. Okay.
Take care, guys.
Kim's still on. Good. Rick, what are your takeaways from this morning? I got some questions later, Sammy. Rick?
I heard Sammy as I was leaving, so I came back.
Okay.
So go ahead and answer the question.
Rick, your takeaway.
You had one for Sammy first, Wally.
Okay, Sammy, you just come from the Worlds, and outcomes are always the sort of the final line. I thought our senior team dominated for most of the games against the U.S. And what was your take as a broadcaster, that whole experience relative to hockey?
Yeah, I mean, so if we're just specifically talking U.S. and Canada,
yeah,
in the rivalry series, Canada and the U.S. took the first 3, and then Canada took the last 4. So it was an interesting sort of build throughout the season. And then in the actual game, the U.S. dominated their games, scoring way more goals, and Canada had a tougher time scoring goals. But when it came to that one game in the preliminary game where Jamie Lee Rattray scored the overtime winner, the U.S. was, I thought played better that game. I thought I thought they were going to win that game. I mean, the way that they, Canada, I think was opportunistic and got some goals. And then Canada with the unfortunate offside goal by the U.S. that was allowed, and then had extra seconds put on the clock. Anyways, the whole thing just was sort of tilted in the U.S. favor, but Canada still prevailed. So I thought that was really a team builder. And I mean, the crowd in the arena, I've never seen anything like that. It was it's a small venue in Brampton, and just the crowd was just amazing when Jamie Lee Rattray scored that goal after 9 shootout shots. That was incredible. That really was the moment of the game. But then the final game, I thought that it certainly was back and forth, but the U.S. seemed to capitalize on the fact that they had been able to put the puck in. They had that confidence around the net. The U.S., I would say, had goalie that hadn't played in the World Championship finals. And Canada was able to score when they could get the puck near the net, but just didn't have as many shots. And I mean, it was neck and neck. It could have gone either way. And in fact, with 9 minutes left in the third period, we as broadcasters, you're preparing for what's coming next, right? So usually by about the 10-minute mark, you're discussing with your video person what videos you want to have between periods and what your theme is going to be. And then they can start to build that out with the rest of the period. So we were starting to talk about that because there's going to be a 15-minute intermission before overtime, and it was still tied at that point. So that's when the tough penalty call against Canada happened. They went down 5-4. And that's, to me, not really what broke the Canadians' back. It was the unfortunate puck over the glass, which you just felt for Claire Thompson. That was just so hard to watch and see. But, yeah, I thought that in the end, I mean, Canada played excellent. It just came down to sort of that final 2 minutes, and then it ended up 6-2. So I don't think the score is really indicative of how they played. But like any U.S.-Canada final, it could have gone either way. I think the score just doesn't really show that, but with 9 minutes left, it was still tied and still exciting. So I think they did everything they could. But, you know, I think it was noticeable that the other pool players, the other teams on other countries, you know, are playing games, and it was noticeable these guys aren't playing games. So getting into game situation, you know, they played 7 big rivalry series games this year, but that's kind of it. So I think that they're going to have to change something moving forward, or the rest of the world is going to continue to get closer and closer. You're right, Wally, doing all those B-pool games was incredible. Like, seeing some of the talent on the other teams was really remarkable, and the individual skills, let alone when you got 2 good ones on another team, like Mueller and Stalder playing together were like any combination in hockey. I mean, those were really fun to watch. But even players like Hutsak on Hungary, it was, I mean, her skill level was incredibly high too. I mean, each of the teams had these great players. So anyways, I digress. I could go on and on about it, but I think Kim has a question.
Oh, I don't have a question. I wanted to chime in on the game, and because I was there. It's just one of the minions in the stands. Although I must have got the worst draw on tickets in the history of hockey. I bought them right away. I bought the full package. You know, you pay $500, you get every single game. But whatever my seat was like the visiting team was always directly behind me. So if we were playing the Swiss, it was Switzerland. If we were playing Team USA, it was Team USA. And they're just going crazy the whole time. And of course, you never get on camera, right? Because they're rarely like panning to that little crew of people. But I don't know. My thought on that final game was that Canada received a couple really soft calls in their favor at the beginning of that period and did nothing with them. And I think the US, like happens all the time in minor hockey, right? You kill a couple penalties that you don't think you deserved, and the momentum shifts very swiftly the other way, right? That call against Stace, like, clearly was not a call. You know, a couple like that. So that's where I saw the tide turn quite quick.
Well, no, you know, so many people said to me, those two, like, it's so bad. They went 5-on-3 at the end. And I say, you know, yeah, that one call was bad, but like, you can't not call the puck over the glass. Like,
oh, for sure. No, I thought,
the refs didn't make that happen, you know?
No, that was there was an even up call, but I think the momentum shift was when the
I
US
agree.
killed off those calls, and they were just like, you know, red eyes, ready to go. But you know, I agree. I watched some of the other games, and I had quite a few players that I've coached who were on different teams who came from Toronto but ended up on France or Hungary or what have you. I thought the Swiss Japan game in the round robin was a great hockey game, and definitely had all the ups and downs that we love. But you know, I had to admit, as I was watching the Canada play in the quarterfinal there, and when what was she, 15-year-old scored the game tying goal to send it to
16, yeah.
Holy crap! The 05s and 06, I couldn't believe they were 05s and 06. I was double checking the website, being like, is that really And I mean, that number 7 they had on D, who was an 05, was phenomenal. And I just,
Oh yeah, Mira Yadaker. Yeah, she's good.
I admire these 16-year-olds who are like pushing Mary-Philippe Poulin around like, yeah, what, you want to fight? And I'm just thinking like, I love this. This is an attitude in female hockey that we need to like package and give like at all age groups, like not to actualize it necessarily, but kind of that like intensity, and to see that from those young players on that stage. I mean, I really thought Sweden was going to win that game, to be perfectly honest.
Well, and Sweden's going to be good in the, like they now have one solid line, right? With Olsen, Svensson, and Youngbloom. They're really good, but there's just one line.
Yeah.
So they just need another couple lines to compete.
But I think my biggest takeaway is I was at the Worlds in Mexico City, which is like Wally, like the air, like this is a whole other experience. Like it's like the stories I can tell. But I finished there on Friday night, flew in on the red eye because it was my daughter's birthday on Saturday, and was at the Canada-Japan game that night. So within 24 hours, I went from losing in a shootout to Chinese Taipei with Iceland in Mexico on the world's worst ice, to being in a Canada game where the entire stands is full of people. And I took videos of the ice and the Zamboni being like, look, it's actually frozen. It was incredible, but you know, it was interesting, you know, going from one world championship to the other. Obviously they're off by a number of divisions. But even just, you know, being able to compare and contrast, you know, and thinking about those top players on teams like Latvia or Iceland or Mexico or Spain, like these are the teams in the group. How the heck do those players get so good? Like Iceland has 200 girls who play hockey, like total in the country. And we had 22 girls on the national team. Like it was really interesting, and it made me feel that much more fortunate and spoiled for what we have in Canada, and especially what we have in Toronto, for that experience. But yeah, the atmosphere in that rink was electric. And I went to the first game. I told my daughter, "Mommy used to play here," and she's like, "Yeah, Mommy, I know you used to play hockey." Like, I was like, just not, you know, they had the like jerseys out, and like there's like Hef's jersey, and like Mommy was on a team with her with that jersey, and my daughter's like, "Can we get popcorn?" Like, just doesn't care. It's amazing. Couldn't care less. Just give me the candy, Mom. Like, stop telling me these boring stories.
I also really enjoyed the intentionality of that World Championship, that the announcers were women, the ushers were women, the people giving out the MVPs were women. You know, every step of the way, there's just an intentionality around it. Or men that were heavily involved in women's hockey. You know, like it really was an OWHA, seemed like intentionality around every step of that too, to create the next leaders, not just on the ice, which I found really special too about the whole thing. Like TSN's crew, they were camera women, you know, that was really neat, and things like that. Nice to see.
Would have been nicer to see more men or more women on the bench. That's stood out to me.
Yes.
How many fully male benches there were. You know, obviously.
Yes, and you're right, fully male. Like,
yeah, not even like a trainer.
Yeah.
The other thing, I was curious your guys' thoughts. I watched that shootout with Canada, and I usually don't pay a lot of attention to handedness, and I usually don't think it matters a lot. Like coaches at minor hockey are like, "Oh, I need a lefty." I'm like, she can't turn right. Like, who cares? But in the shootout with Canada and US, the majority of the shooters were right-handed. Almost all of the shooters were right-handed. And I thought that was interesting because the right-handed players are in a huge minority on both those teams and on most hockey teams. I haven't really done any research into it to see like if there's some validity, but you know, Sammy as a goalie might be able to shine some light on it. It just really struck me. There was righty after righty after righty, and I never had thought in my whole life, is there an advantage to being a righty in a shootout situation or not? So I don't know, Sammy, if you've ever put any thought to that or if that's something you've noticed, but for whatever reason it stood out.
it's an interesting thought to think about, because I'm not sure that there's an advantage either way. But, I think there's an advantage to the goalie just seeing the same thing over and over. Like if I'm going against a righty and then I continue to go against righties, you're kind of playing in the same way. So I wonder if that's what, worked in the goalie's favor and why it really extended. It's an interesting thought, because when you go back and forth, you have to think consciously as the goalie, what is an easy shot for them, what is a hard shot, and sort of play your game accordingly. But if it's righty after righty after righty, I didn't notice that, but that's a good pickup.
But it wasn't all of them, right? But it just obviously you're going to send Poulin out like as a lefty, but it struck me, and I only ever had one shootout move, and I think I went in a shootout once in my whole life, which probably is indicative of how good my shootout move was. But I did think it's an interesting way to end a game. Like I used to hate it, and as a fan, I love it, even if my team loses. Like I just think it's so exciting
probably
to
now
watch.
As a coach, you probably have some wicked shootout moves because you've been working on them in all your skills.
But the problem is I do it once, and like I still use the same move, and it still works. And then the goalie's like, I know the move. I don't have any other. But yeah, on the 7-year-old goalies who just fall over on their face, I still have some street cred in that vicinity, I guess. But I actually have a backhand unlike the rest of my players, so that's helpful. Sammy, are you coaching next year? Have you decided yet?
Like I would love it. I would love it so much, but I don't know that I can convince both my husband and my daughter to do it. So yeah, I don't know. It's a lot with the Toronto Six because we play every day on the weekends at 2. So it worked out perfectly. The practices were at 8 in the morning, so I could kind of work it out. But if they're not coming with me, it's really not fair on my family to then be gone the entire day from whatever they're doing. So we have her in lacrosse right now. She seems to really enjoy box lacrosse because you don't have to put any equipment on, or not box lacrosse, field lacrosse. So field lacrosse, you just have to put the goggles on, and she seems to enjoy that. So I'm trying to find something that I saw Ellen Hughes, as I mentioned earlier, and she's basically raised those 3 boys. And she knows my plight with my daughter. And so she was asking about it, and she said, just tell her this is what we do in this family. And because when she was raising her boys, she had 3 boys at home, and Jim was on the road the whole time. And so she just took them to the rink every day, and that's all she knew. And so she's like, this is what we do. You play hockey. And I said, yeah, it's harder with one though, when they don't want to do it and you're dragging them. It's just a predicament I never really thought that I would necessarily be in. But they are their own little people, that's for sure. So we'll see.
Well, I have one who doesn't play, and he repeatedly tells me how much he hates hockey. So that's my oldest, but the girls seem to have are invested.
And when did you give up on sort of pushing him into it? Did you give him like a year or 2, or?
I mean, I never pushed him into it. Quite frankly, I never wanted to coach boys hockey. So maybe that just like when I asked him, maybe even just my tone was like, please say no type of tone. Like maybe, I don't know. Like I do think kids are smarter than we are. But we did ask him, because there's a community rink like where the Markham team used to play, like right down the street from us. And so they have house league, and I'd always ask him. Now we got to the point where I said, do you want to do hockey or squash? And he's gotten quite into squash, so that's his thing. But he's like my husband, more introverted, more quiet, doesn't like really thrive in team environments and like get super excited, and like that's his vibe. So I think he's an individual sport person, at least if that's something he wants to pursue competitively. I see a value in him being in a team environment because that's not his natural tendency. But I also don't think he's going to thrive in that environment, whereas my daughters are the opposite. They're more like me. So the 5-year-old is the one.
We'll see. I mean, it's the 24th summer hockey school season coming up now, so I am excited for that and excited to do all of that. So that will never go away. And then, when she goes away to college, I can get back to coaching locally.
There you go. Yeah. Only 14 more years or 13
14 more years. Till then, I just coach my coaches. So
perfect.
Yeah, I just Yeah, pretend like I'm doing something around them. Did you think about this? Or don't forget about the third goalie. Make sure they're included in the team photo.
Oh, that reminds me, Sammy, I ran a tryout last night for U11 AA. We had 50 kids on the ice.
50.
It was amazing. 50 and it was not a big rink. It was at rinks, which you can imagine is not a huge ice surface. And it was really funny. So I show up, and I mean, it's just hockey school to me, right? Like, just keep them moving, keep them going. You have to scrimmage at some point so that the coaches can, look at players. But all the parents, so of course I know all of them, are like, how are you going to do this? Did you get other ice? And I said to them, this is like, it's like my Olympics, right? Like, this is my gold medal
This
game.
is what I do. This is
Like,
what I
this
do.
is like, give me 60 kids and no practice plan. And I'm like, this is so exciting. This is where, like, why I was meant to be put on this earth. So, like, I had them all going. They were rarely standing around. And I got like 15 emails from parents this morning being like, that was so impressive. How did you do that? But it was a lot of kids. Like, you blow the whistle for them to come in, and they just kept coming in.
More and more waves.
6 goalies. It was a lot, but it was a lot of fun. But a lot of parents like, what are you gonna do? Like, they were so worried that I wasn't going to figure it out. I'm like, I think we'll be fine. But it was cool to see that level of talent, like, amongst 9 and 10-year-olds. I mean, there's some girls who are quite strong. Like,
is that your daughter's team?
No, she's younger. That would be the age group up. My daughter will be in U9 for a couple more years. So this is the age group above.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they managed to get a couple girls to come over from the boys, the better boys hockey, as we like to call it, and come back to the dark side with the girls. So a couple of girls who would have been playing AAA this year.
I'm up in Timmins right now. I just landed in Timmins, and I'm doing the OHF provincials tonight, the banquet. So it's U18A, I guess. So I'm rarely around boys hockey, so it'll be interesting to see the different dynamic.
There'll be a lot of really good haircuts. I can tell you that much, Sammy. Some playoff hair is going to look.
I'll take some good pictures.
I'm sure Hal probably sees them best in Minnesota, but that's going to be a look for sure. Anyways, I got to jump off, guys. It was good to see everyone. Thanks for getting Courtney involved, Wally. That was great to see her again. And,
and Wally, thanks for allowing us to just kind of chat some of the times too. It's fun to just kind of get connected. So much appreciated. You guys just allow this like women's hockey talk to go on. I appreciate it.
We're well trained.
Next week, maybe next week. I've got somebody coming on, but I talked to Carla McLeod for an hour and a half on Monday, and I wish that you could have heard the conversation, because she went into the nuances of that competition and within her team in terms of ice time, the head coach wanting to move a player into a different line combination, and she just articulated it so well. On Twitter, she posted her being mic'd against Switzerland in the first game. Sally, it's a coaching clinic.
Yeah, we showed it on TSN.
Oh, unbelievable. Like,
yeah, it was really great.
That's something, coaching in the future. She's giving feedback, and the one time out she called a challenge that might not work out and they could be shorthanded, but she addressed that with the team that, we still might have to kill a penalty, but we're going to challenge it. And she, coaching in the future, I call it, the discussion of the goal was canceled, so the timeout paid off, but her coaching in between getting ready for the next shift was amazing. So,
are you going to have her on soon to talk about her bronze medal win?
Well, I may get you to phone her to join. I'd like it to be, a lot more female coaches and leaders to come on for that. I've asked her to, and she's really reluctant. She doesn't mind talking one-on-one about it because it's sort of a more difficult for her to speak with a large group there and so many different people on. But I'm definitely going to approach her. Mark Howell from the University of Calgary went to the national final, coached in the university games. He's going to be a guest in the future, but I really want to get Carla on. She's a priority. So I think she's just one of the more outstanding coaches that's out there. So, okay, everybody, it's just about time again. And Tom, I'm going to ice time tonight. I'm going to go to the Kyle Wanvig's spring camp ice times with his U11 and U13 team. It's at Lake Bonavista, 5:45. So,
well, I just found out yesterday, or I guess day before, I don't know, it doesn't matter. We plan on leaving for Latvia on the 16th.
Yep.
And WestJet pilots might go on strike that day.
Oh my God.
So it's kind of a.
Are you caught holding the phone on the tickets?
I don't know. I haven't checked. Yeah. I don't know what the process is going to be, but I mean, you know, we got only there just going for like 6 days total, and there's a day traveling. So I don't know if we'll end up there or not. If they won't, I don't know. You know, because I've got a B&B reserved, but then to hold it, I've got to pay the rest of the money.
Yeah. One
of my friends from Salzburg's bought tickets, so hopefully they settle it.
Okay. Rick, are you good to meet at Cadence tomorrow at noon?
Yeah, noon works fine, Wally.
Okay, I'm writing it down. I'm gonna type it in. I've got a blood appointment at 10, or I would meet earlier.
No.
But
noon actually works better for me, so that's great.
Okay, we'll meet you at Cadence at noon. And Tommy, if you want to join us.
Well, I play Wednesday, I play at noon.
No, this is Friday.
Friday, I play at noon, sorry.
Okay. All right. And I might give Steve Carlisle a call or somebody, but if it's just you and I, we can chat. Okay.
Sounds good.
Really good, guys. Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Wally.
Bye.